I'm marching for my aunt. She was hung by the Iranian government for being a Baha'i.
It's very hard. It's harder than you can imagine.
I'm marching for members of my family who died in the Rwandan genocide and the survivors of that genocide who are struggling to move on with their lives.
Just like, can't express it. I just couldn't.
I'm marching for all those who are under threat of extermination today.
Hitler didn't win. Hitler didn't win because I walk on those stones. I'm a gay person here. Hitler didn't win.
Every time I learn something, I feel like I know less and less because of how much more I need to learn about what I've just learned.
If they would have caught on, I would have been shot. The nurse would have been shot right away. There was no jury and there was no judge. She helped a Jew, an undesirable.
And it sickens me to hear people say they have hope and do nothing, because people depend on us to do something and to do it now. I was born and raised in northern Ghana in West Africa, and I came to Canada at about 11 years old. And I was learning more and more about the history of my own country and about what was going on in Africa as a whole. I felt such a huge responsibility to do something for the motherland, really, because Africa had given me so much besides life.
They can be tolerated or they can be humiliated, but they cannot be killed. There is a moral barrier. We cannot kill them.
I have been learning a lot about the Holocaust in high school. One of the promises about the Holocaust that a lot of the world leaders made was never again. And it haunted me and it stuck with me through my studies. And when I heard or first encountered what was going on in Sudan, I asked myself, where did that promise go? It's really a failed promise. Did we forget about the Holocaust? And it was something that moved me and it inspired me. And I just wanted to know more. I chose to come because I wanted to see where this happened. It's a journey that I wanted to take personally, and I also wanted to take it because when I go back, I want to be able to speak about these things in more than statistics. I want to be able to tell people's story.
And 1, 2, 3, Canada. 1, 2, 3. Canada!
This is a memorial to the homosexual victims of the Nazis. This is an official state-sponsored memorial to the gay victims of the Holocaust, something that 20, 25 years ago would be completely unfathomable here because at that time, there was no recognition of homosexuals as...
I'm not a Jewish person. I'm not a person related to anyone that disappeared in the Holocaust. But I think about second generation and third generation survivors of those people, and there are no second generation survivors for gay and lesbian people. If they disappeared in the Holocaust, there's no one left that represent them. And I feel that it's a way that I'm going to understand more about who I am in the world.
From 1935 on, there were approximately 8,000 convictions
I'm
a year.
a gay political activist, and I'm sort of here representing the gay and lesbian people that disappeared, that are often not thought about being part of the Holocaust. And I think somebody has to represent them. I think somebody has to be here as part of their legacy, and it's the way that I understand myself more. It's my history too. This was a homosexual act you could be arrested for. Your neighbors could say, I saw you kiss so-and-so, and you went to a concentration camp. And I think people still look at this and think, that's disgusting, that's terrible, I don't like public affection. Yeah, I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do this in public. There's places where it's illegal.
The question is what happens here, and what happens here is a particularly important part of the story when we talk about the Holocaust. And this particular meeting, which takes place in this villa in January 1942, is that part of the story about how do we get to that part of the Nazi policy, which looks at the murder of European Jewry in place.
I really like the way they're doing it too. They're kind of easing us into the camps, I think. And so, you get to see Berlin, you see, seeing where they signed the final solution in this like villa and whatnot. You're seeing it sort of from the perpetrator's perspective, I guess, a little bit, right? And seeing the monuments that they've erected. And I think that's kind of a smart way to approach it, because just jumping right into seeing the camps, I think, would be both overwhelming and maybe just unexpected, I guess, yeah. Initially, it was just curiosity, this was an event in history. But as you start peeling the layers away, and when I see the common experience that relates to what happened to the Baha'is in Iran in the 1980s, I felt there was an opportunity to maybe gain a closer understanding because the experiences were so similar. When I saw this trip, I saw it more as an opportunity to kind of gain that connection and feel closer to it.
I just want to give you the words of what the designing artist, Peter Eisenman, had in mind when he created this space. It's a place one feels alone and abandoned, a place without a beginning or an end, with no directions. He said, I'm not interested in beauty, I'm interested in terror.
There was a group of us that were kind of talking about what that might be. I'm wondering just if we could have a couple of ideas. What does that mean to you?
I thought it was recreating the sound of a train. And I thought as we were walking through, we're in this tight corridor here, I just, if you just close your eyes, you could picture, okay, we're getting on the train. We don't know where we're going.
If you remember what it sounded like when we first walked in, there was like a hiss, like a, and then a, and I can only imagine, like that was really, as soon as you said that, I thought, oh my goodness, and I have no idea if that is even supposed to be at all, but it was such an astute observation, I thought, like, so interesting.
coming into Poland was really kind of weird and kind of tough. You know, we're en route. You know, the trees going by, you think about all the things you've seen, where you think about the trees going by the trains. The roadway gets rougher, and it's like this beating noise. You think a lot about the trains. It's getting a little scary now. I mean, we're at a place where the things we wanted to do, but also the things we don't want to do. I mean, we're going to hear the stories now. We're in Poland, we're going to hear them talk about the survivors, talk about the camps.
So let me tell you about this camp. I arrived at the beginning of August of 1943. I was 11 years old. The conditions in that camp, when I arrived, were so horrific. Werkzee was the worst. And unfortunately, that's where I finished up. They were so horrific that there were continuous illness. People were dying from being ill. When we arrived there, the camp was surrounded by Nazi guards with machine guns, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And we were told to stand in rows on a parade, and the commander came and said that the names that he's going to call out are those are going to go with train to the next camp. So he started calling out names, and we realized that the names that are being called out are going straight from there to the Strzelnica, where the graves are, and we were all going, because when you looked around, you saw that these are the people who are not maybe able, they think not able to work anymore. People in rags, people that can't continue. So we stood there for about half an hour. Wachtmeister Schulz started going from this side to this side. I was more or less in the middle. Next to me was my best friend, Jacob Guttebaum. He wasn't a relative, but he had a name similar to mine. And he was in rags. And he also had an impediment. He was born with one foot slightly shorter than the other, so he would walk like this a little bit. But Wachtmeister, when he came, didn't stop in front of him. He stopped in front of me. And he looked at me, and he looked at me, and suddenly he took his hand and he pulled Jacob out of the row, and he threw him to the side where the condemned to death were. And then he went on. And then they took away the people who were going to be shot. And this type of existence went on for quite a long time. Again, I was fortunate. Why was I fortunate?
Every time I hear a story of a survivor, it always comes to my head, like, I don't understand why or how humans can be as bad as they are. I don't understand how the Nazis got to do what they did. I just don't understand. And every time it's worse. I find, how can they treat a child like that? And I wonder if it's like, is human nature, part of our human nature is bad, or is it some people that are more prone to being bad, or I don't know what it is, and I would like to know so we could do something about it. And also the memorial, I thought it was very powerful. The way I interpreted it is basically seeing Pinchas and Peggy. I see the victims and the weight the Holocaust put on their shoulders and in their lives, and also the hole that it left in their hearts and the scar they carry forever.
When I first applied on the trip, I was really excited, and just the fact that this trip exists brought so much hope to me that there can be change and that something can happen. But then there are just moments on this trip where I just feel really upset, and it makes me think of what's happening now and how much things haven't really changed. And then that got me thinking whether or not I ever want to bring kids into this world, and that just really scares me.
You know, as he was describing it, and I just sort of, I pictured him, and I kind of shrank him in age a little bit, and I kind of listened to, the discussion of the work that he had to do. And I was thinking about that a lot, and then he said,
was 11. Like he was a kid. He was a little kid.
In 1963, a very close friend of mine died of lung cancer, and I went to his funeral, and it was the first time that I cried. I have never cried before this. You see, emotions of Holocaust survivors were, but they were killed, actually. Our emotions, we don't, at least I, speaking for myself, I don't react to things. I mean, today, when I look at a flower, I see the beauty of it, but I actually can't feel it. My wife feels it. Everybody else feels the beauty of it. They can actually feel it inside. To me, I look at it, but the emotion is not there. And it really is very difficult, you know, to cope with the fact that it's so difficult to feel real emotions, because during the war, you couldn't afford to have emotions.
For me, a moment that really touched me was when Pincus was talking about how he doesn't really see the beauty in flowers anymore. And it touched me because my sister, who's 17 years old, she's obsessed with flowers. She can't wait for when spring comes and the cherry blossoms comes out. And she can't wait to flower press in the summer and all that. And it just made me realize that how much we take for granted every day, even simple things like flowers.
I can't even begin to describe the magnitude to which there are like thoughts just going like all around in my head. And I really do emphasize the honor I feel in being able to have Pinchas on this trip. Just because they're like this piece of history and they give you a piece of humanity. And I think we're getting something that nobody else will be able to get after this. Like, there will be a few more chances, and then unfortunately life goes where it has to go, and these stories will just stop, and you won't be able to get these personal experiences anymore, and it will never touch people in the same way. So I think we're very lucky and honored to have them on this trip and to be with them, to be able to touch them, to hug them. So that's one thing that I'm really grateful for.
Auschwitz is divided to sub-camps, mainly free camps. Auschwitz I, over here. Auschwitz II, called also Birkenau. We call it Auschwitz-Birkenau. And Auschwitz III, which is Bunamonovich. Before we actually step in, you'll see that it's today a camp, yet it's also a museum. There's a saying, whoever did not enter Auschwitz will never enter. And whoever entered Auschwitz will never really exit. Which means people that were here, they never really recovered. We are not really able to understand what's going to happen inside. We're going to try, we're going to learn. We're not going to understand.
I think while we were in Berlin, it was still very intellectual. But it wasn't until the other day when we got to Poland and just seeing everything, the magnitude of it. I don't think that I ever thought that it wasn't going to hit me emotionally, but just my original reasons for coming were very academically based, that this is what I study in school. And getting here it's when you have to reconcile the emotional with the intellectual. I knew this stuff was going to be there. I knew a little bit about the camps, but I was not prepared for what I would feel when I saw them.
this picture, because through this picture you'll understand what we're going to see later on. What you see over here, that's what's happening in Birkenau. If you look at the model, which by the way, the model itself was made by a Pole, which when during the war, he's saying that he saw a convoy of trucks.
Right now, I work as a VP events for the Palestinian-Israeli Mediation and Peace Students Association, and I fight for Palestinian human rights, but I would also fight for anybody's human rights. I truly believe that when you try to put yourself in a situation that you're not accustomed to, when you try to understand a perspective that you are not familiar with or you may oppose, you are more likely to be... I don't even know how to explain it. You're more level-headed in your approach to the issue because you are able to see, or hear the experiences of another group of people that you might not know. And although the experiences may seem different, like experiencing the Holocaust or genocide in Rwanda or an occupation or whatever it is, there are similarities there. There is suffering, there are deaths, and I think to be able to see that and hear the experiences of those people, no matter where their experience is from, they share something that's in common and they've suffered together. I hope that with people coming on trips like these or going to learn about different atrocities, end up doing something about it, taking what they've learned from history and then applying it to what's happening now.
As you moved through the exhibit, you saw piles of suitcases in there. And on the suitcases, it was written the names, then their birth date, and their identification. And the image that it created immediately of these suitcases was they looked like tombstones to me. That it was, it gave the birth date and it gave the name, and they were arranged in such a way that they were propped up, and it was just, your mind just kind of races, And it made it very real.
I couldn't do the hair. I couldn't even go in the room. The glass, I guess, urn with the ashes, that started to tip me over. Even when I was first studying this stuff and I found out about the hair and like bales of hair with the amount of kilograms written on it, and that messes me right up. I mean, I was saying to them, I always think about how when you read history and then you talk about how like the Native Americans and how they used every piece of the buffalo. And I thought, can you get any more horrible than that? I don't think so. I mean, it's the absolute ultimate dehumanization of a people. And I mean, we're here, and it's not just murder, it's not just mass murder, it's industrialized murder.
I don't know if you've seen The Reader, but I was thinking of a line at the end that a Jewish lady survivor said, if you want catharsis, go to literature. Nothing comes out of the camps. So I was just looking at the person across from me and just thinking literally nothing comes out of the camps. Any of the people, emotions. I'm angry at myself right now because I'm not having an emotional response. So I'm trying to go back to that line, nothing comes out of the camps.
I'm marching for my aunt, who in 1983 was imprisoned by the Iranian government for being a Baha'i. She was 27 years old and was hung with 9 other women, the youngest of which was 17.
Shaquille Wisdom is a 13-year-old boy who came out to his closest friend who said, I don't care, I love you. His closest friend told a couple of other friends, and those friends started the abuse that ended with him being put in a garbage can in his high school and rolled around in the school. 3 days later, he took his life. And this was in 2007. I'm walking for Shaquille Wisdom.
When I was thinking about who I was going to march for, I was trying to find a connection between my experience and what happened here. And the only connection that I could find, I'm not Jewish, I come from Australia, it's a million miles away, is the families that perished here, and I'm marching for my family.
I'm marching for all the Rwandese and Sudanese orphans who are survivors of the Rwandan and Darfur genocide.
I'm marching for the historians, the musicians, the artists who, through their work in culture, subverted
I'm marching
the idea
for members of my family who died in the Rwandan genocide and the survivors of that genocide.
I'm marching for the forgotten victims of the Nanjing massacre, also known as the raping of Nanjing.
I'm marching for those who haven't been recognized for the discrimination that they face yet.
I'm an ambassador for the Canadian Red
I think it's
Cross.
one
I'm marching
thing
for
to-
victims of landmines, and I'm marching for my grandparents who were expelled from their
Marching
ancestral
for women
homeland,
and
which is
children who are victims of domestic abuse, physical, sexual, emotional. I'm marching for the women's courage to leave and a safe zone.
I'm marching in recognition of our shared humanity.
My name is Stegi Lipman. I was born in Kaunas, Lithuania, July 29th, 1934. A very cosmopolitan city with schools, with a university, with museum, with theaters. And life was really wonderful. I was like the little princess. June 1941, when our lives turned upside down. Germany invaded Lithuania. And right away, they picked on the Jews. First of all, about a month, a couple of weeks later, they collected all the intellectuals. Some of them never came back. My father came back. And proclamations came out that all the Jews, if your grandfather was Jewish and you didn't even think about it, you didn't even practice it, you were considered an undesirable, a subhuman. You have to leave your homes. They gave you, I think, I don't remember exactly, about a month time.
I was born in Sudan during the Civil War, which started in 83. And my dad is a Christian. And one day a friend of him who works at the government told him, you have to get out of the country because the government wanted to kill you because you are an activist against the government. My father had to leave the country around 94, and we didn't see him for almost 11 years until 2005. When Pinkas and Fergie was telling their stories, is how you see your friend dying. You have no power of doing something about it. All you have is fear. Fear of whether you can live the next second. Fear of whether, what's going to happen to you in the next minute. Are they going to shoot you? If they don't shoot you, is the bomb going to fall on you and kill you?
One day, my mother says to me, I have permission to take you to work. And I went with her. When we got back that night, it was deathly quiet. The only thing we heard was crying that the sound is still in my head. It was the kinder action. All children and all people were taken away. I was the only child left. I get the goosebump to this day. Where were all the children taken? To Auschwitz. And if you look, as you come in, that big board, you can see Kaunas, Lithuania, leading into Auschwitz. What did I do? I suppose my nature did not kick in. I took my Shirley Temple doll and I smacked it against the wall. And we went back.
The story of the doll kind of struck me. Like, I remember a moment when it just like, when I saw those dead body when I was in Kaya, I just lost a sense of, you know, like it felt like my childhood was taken away from me that day. It felt like everything was taken from me. And when I hear a story of Peggy, and when I was hearing a story of, it just I felt this sense of hopelessness, sense of loss, sense of imprisonment, sense that you are powerless. You know, you can do nothing.
As you came in, you saw mounds of clothes, mounds of shoes, mounds of eyeglasses, mounds of suitcases. And she took me to a corner and she stuffed me in the right places and found me a jacket and a shoe with a heel to make me look older. Because in the back of her mind, she saw what was happening to children. And when we went to register, she said that I am 12 years old instead of 10. And we went into the concentration camp. Now let me tell you, if the ghetto is bad, even if a labor camp, you cannot compare a concentration camp.
I'm really at a loss for words, and it's a huge shock to see that something like this happened just a couple of decades ago. It hasn't even been 100 years, so it's something that's fresh, and the same things are happening right now in Darfur and in other places around the world. There's a list, and we say never again, but it seems, it almost makes, it's hopeless, kind of. It seems hopeless.
I was incredibly angry today. And I was angry that we carried on despite the rain and the lightning storm. I was angry that we had the ceremony when I was soaking wet and that we had an itinerary that we had to stick to. And I was angry at all of that. And I realized that was not what was making me angry. That's what I was taking my anger out on. What I was angry at was that this happened and I was helpless.
It's all well and good to say don't be angry, but if I could choose to feel a way, I choose to feel uplifted, I choose to be motivated. But I think for me, anger is my motivation. I'm angry this happened. I'm angry that this still happens, and I'm angry that we can't do anything about it, or maybe we can't. So I don't know, for me, it's like that's the feeling I channel. Like I cry because I'm frustrated, and I cry when I see barracks where people lived like rats who were intelligentsia, who were brilliant minds, and they were living like vermin. And just the idea is like, yeah, I'm angry because I want to do something.
Looking around, we were such a diverse group, and we were just embracing everyone's culture, and it was amazing because it was exactly what they were trying to destroy. They were trying to destroy all diversity. They were trying to destroy my religion. They were trying to destroy every religion. And we were there and showing that we weren't going to let that happen. That we were going to embrace culture, and we were going to be us. And I just looked around, and I just wanted. That's when I started to cry. I didn't cry at all that day until that point, because I just looked around and I was like, why can't the world be like we are right now in this room? Like why not? And that's what really got to me. So I just had a huge roller coaster today, and it was hard and draining, but it was incredible. I needed to see that. So.
I know I've talked a bunch, but I can't help responding to why can't the world be like this? It is. It is. It is right here, and it gets bigger. And I can't even, Faggy's at the bottom of the bottom of what Hitler wanted. And we all sat around and listened to her. The world is like this. We just have to make it grow.
It's very hard. It's harder than you can imagine to relive. I couldn't have done it alone for $1 million to go through this alone.
We're lucky to have
So,
you.
like, that we shall overcome, that song? We shall overcome. Makes you shudder. It's just
The amount.
the amount. You see, you don't realize it. Even it happened, but you don't realize it, how many. The amount is boggling. Here's another pair with a heel. You see? This is the heel. Also with heels. That's what you made me pick out with a heel. There's another one with a heel. But I should look older than 10.
It was very difficult. Going into the room with all the shoes really haunted me. When I walked in, I saw this little pair of shoes that I imagined belonged to a child. And I immediately remembered this little girl, Amina, that I saw in Ghana. I went back hoping to do some charity work and visit my family. I hadn't been back after 10 years, and hoping to just do something. And when I went back, I visited an orphanage with my mom and my aunt. And when I visited there, we brought in supplies for these kids. And I was seeing such small space, but with so many little kids sharing this small space. And as I was leaving, one of the little girls came and was pulling at my pants. And I looked down at her with the most beautiful big brown eyes I'd ever seen. And she said to me, "Don't forget about us." And when I looked at those shoes, the connection became very clear to me that both their stories and both their lives was filled with so much hope and laughter and joy, and yet they have been forgotten.
I did the shoes today. Took me a couple tries. Paul Wittes was there. Got a bear hug in the back, sobbed it out. Kind of felt like it was a personal triumph because yesterday I couldn't even walk in the room at Auschwitz. And then came the crematorium. Honestly, don't know that I'm thinking anything. I really don't. I barely have words, let alone thoughts.
This place is harder to grasp because they're wooden structures. They're more like barns. It's not the brick Auschwitz. And then we get to this place where, for the first time, you see a gas chamber. And then Pinka says this is the last place I saw my family alive.
We arrived at the Umschlagplatz, and because I was reasonably tall, I actually went with the men. But my sister got separated from my mother, and she was pushed towards the children, and my mother was pushed towards the women. And suddenly, as we were standing there waiting to know what is happening, I saw my sister running towards my mother, and she had this long, long braid because she was very proud of her hair. So she was running, she hugged my mother, took her around, and from that time onwards, despite the fact that I can remember every member of my family's face and friends and others, I have not been able to conjure up my twin sister, who was part of me, part of my flesh, part of my blood. I cannot see her face. Whenever I think of my sister, which is reasonably often, all I see was the blonde braid.
I was very touched by Pinkas's, by his story today. And as a twin myself, I always thought the worst thing that could happen to my twin is that I could lose her. But now I know that the absolute worst thing is to not be able to remember her face.
I was part of the group that was standing around with Pinkas at the end, and I'd been feeling physically ill the whole time at the camp since Pinkas told his story. I think my body just was like not prepared to accept his story. It was too much for me. What he's been through is, I don't know how somebody can get through that, and yet I was losing it as I was doing all day. And Pinkas was comforting me. He gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek and said, it's okay. And it just like, I'm so overwhelmed that he is capable of giving so much love after everything that he's been through. I think he's one of the most incredible people I've ever met. It's amazing.
El male rachamim, shochewein b'marawamim, hametzei menucha nechona al kanfewein.
The inhumanity of it all made me feel closer to my aunt, like she was walking next to me, telling me, look at this, remember this. This is suffering. You cannot forget what has happened here, what has happened to me, what is still happening to others. This is your responsibility. Hearing these stories, seeing the magnitude of what a few simple, demented and disturbed ideas could cause. And also seeing that these weren't animals, these were real people, real humans committing these acts. You have to remind yourself, what makes me human? It's your responsibility to understand.
ושקברו חיים בידי הנאצים הרוצחים יימח שמם. بعاشق كل زي يتبلل باتلوي نشمتهم.
I want to cry. That's why I'm sort of sorry that people feel like they need to cut, because when they come over and they put their arm around me, the tears stop because I feel the love, right? I want to cry. That's why I need to, have a moment aside and just sit and look and not think anything and just let it come out,
Adonai yunachlatam v'yanchu b'shalom al mishkavaham v'nomar awamein.
Isn't this amazing? This is where we are, and it's
That's it. Look at
so
this.
beautiful.
Isn't this amazing? Look at this. And life goes on. Look how beautiful.
And even the statue that's in the middle, just over there.
Yeah, right here. Look at this.
We got a small street.
All right, whatever you say. Whatever you say.
A little spot. I think Egan mentioned you to sit. Yeah.
She wants a minute. She wants some.
We all trudged along to come nearer to the place. This was some 3 kilometers from our village. There's a kind of hillock. At the foot of this little hill, there was a dugout. We were ordered to stand at the top of the hillock. When it came to our turn, we begged my father to undress. He would not undress. He wanted to keep his underclothes. He did not want to stand naked. Then they tore the clothes off the old man and he was shot. And then they took my mother and shot her too. And then there was my grandmother. She was 80 years old and she had 2 children in her arms. And she was shot on the spot with the babies in her arms. There was my younger sister. She asked to run naked. She went up to the Germans with one of her friends and she asked to be spared. He looked into her eyes and shot the 2 of them. They fell together in their embrace, the 2 young girls, my sister and her young friend. And then my turn did come. We turned toward the grave, and the German turned around and asked, "Who do you want me to shoot first?" And I did not answer. I felt him take the child from my arms, and the child cried out and was shot immediately. And then he aimed at me.
My aunt was a practicing Baha'i in Iran when the Iranian Revolution broke out in 1979. And one night, the Revolutionary Guard appeared out of nowhere and rounded up my aunt and my grandparents and took them to prison. She was continuously interrogated and told, either give up being a Baha'i and convert to Islam, or we will kill you. And each time, my aunt told them, absolutely not, that it's my right to believe what I believe. On June 17th, 1983, my aunt got to visit with my grandmother one final time. she said goodbye. And instead of being taken back to her cell, she was taken to be hanged. She was 27.
Treblinka dort, das ist das jiddisch gitte Ort. Wer kommt dahin, verbleibt schon dort. Wird mir zurückkommen. Dort wie ein Kind schreit zu der Mammen. Oi Mama, lass mich nicht allein. Ich will gehen mit dir zusammen. Schweig, Kinderle, schweig, Herzele, sag nicht euch. Als du bist Aid, weil Brüder, Schwester, Tate, Mammen, fuhren alle zusammen, fuhren alle zu versammeln. Schweig, Kinderle.
Time and time again, people repeat the same things. They'll just follow the masses or follow the leader or something like that. And I'm hoping that after this experience, more people will be more inclined to stand strongly and say when something is wrong. Because that's the Holocaust could have been avoided if more people had done that, because I'm sure with 11 million people who died in the Holocaust and having the millions of others around them knowing what's happening, if just half of the people around them could stand up and revolt against what was going on, it probably wouldn't have happened. You need collaborators. You need people who are willing to help you in your plans if you want to do something that evil.
Samen, schweig, Kinderle, schweig, Herzele, sag nicht euch, als du bist da hier.
This experience definitely has given me a lot more questions than answers. Every time I learn something, I feel like I know less and less because of how much more I need to learn about what I've just learned. Questions concerning like human nature and humanity, I'd have to figure out on my own.
I came on this trip because I studied the Holocaust academically and because I figured that this was the next logical step to go and see these things that I've studied in depth. And I think what I've come away from this trip with is the idea that whereas before I was very detached and academic with it, now it's now it's a bleeding open wound that I hope heals very, very shortly. And that I couldn't have done it without these people. I mean, it's more of a incredibly emotive experience for me than it has been any type of, inquiry and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know whether or not it would be fair to try to put it on the questions answers paradigm just because, I didn't really have questions when I came on the trip. I just wanted to experience it, and I have, and it was more than I had bargained for.
I often heard a lot of adults say, kids don't care anymore these days. They don't stand up for anything. I hope to go back and even without saying a word and let my actions speak, that we do care and that we are willing to take that challenge on that our parents in the past and our ancestors have left us, and take this challenge on and actually do something and show that we care. And it's just, we need that extra help. And that's one of the things that this journey, I hope, will give me, this awareness that there is hope, and this awareness that the older generation does care enough to help us with a helping hand and take us on to the next part of this journey. And when I go back, I hope that my actions, more so than my words, can show my parents, my family, my school, my community, that we are the future, but we're the future right now.
I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.
This program has given me more courage, more inspirations, and more confidence in myself to help somebody who's been persecuted, somebody who's suffering. I took instead peace and conflict studies, which really started recently, and it might not make a good job, good money for me. But I realized that learning peace and conflict will help me help other people. Even though I help one person, as I said earlier, it's a big difference.
With deep respect and appreciation for your compassion and dedication to creating a society endued with the values of respect and understanding, and your commitment to Holocaust education, we thank you, Fagi.
This has been one of the most beautiful events that will add to my life, and I shall remember every one of you as long as I live. From the hierarchy, the ones who were very instrumental, thank you so much for that phone call. And all, Robert and Joe, thank you, and naturally Pinchas, and all of you, and Ellie. Ellie was the only one I knew. So I didn't know anybody here. But it's been a journey, it's been a week. The only question is, what am I going to do to top this? So thanks again.
When I looked around, it's like there's black people and there's brown people and there's just, it's a room full of people that would have been taken out of there. There's very few that wouldn't have been taken out of there. And we're listening to this German woman who was supposed to be killed, and Hitler didn't win. He just didn't win. We're listening to her. He didn't win. And it makes me angry and hopeful. This world will get better. It's that simple. It just will. We will make it better.